Here, a new episode of Chordplay. This is the Chords of Foghat, and I've had some requests to feature some of their music. And Foghat formed in London, England in 1971 and went on to become very popular in the 1970s, thanks in part to some of their singles, like their cover of Willie Dixon's I Just Want to Make Love to You, Slow Ride, Fool for the City, and some of those songs. They hit the charts, they hit the radio, and they exploded. And they're still active today, even though there's only one original member. I think the drummer, Roger Earl, has been in the band since 1971 until today. They've lost some members, and they've had some personnel changes and stuff like that. But Foghat's definitely a really cool band, you know, popular from the 70s, but they're still active today, and you go back and listen to some of these songs, and there's mixing, you know, rock and blues and soul and some of these different elements in their music. Really good stuff. The original 70s lineup of Foghat featured Dave Peverett on vocals and guitar. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. Also, Rod Price was on guitar, so you had a dynamic duo of guitarists in Foghat in the 70s. And then they've had personnel changes and member changes, like I mentioned. Some members, you know, passed away, too. But Foghat's one of those bands, their music pops up in commercials, TV shows, movies. Certain celebrities, you know, I've noticed, you know, like in public wearing a Foghat t-shirt, or they mention the band, like in an interview. And one of my favorites is from the 1999 VMAs that was on MTV. And Jim Carrey showed up in character. He was like the 60s, 70s kind of hippie rocker guy, and it was hilarious, you know. And during his, I think he was like accepting an award or something from the Truman Show, but during his acceptance speech, you know, he literally said, you know, would it kill you every once in a while to play a little Foghat? So the music and examples in this episode are going to come from a variety of Foghat albums, and I literally just kind of picked these interesting chord-based movements and chord ideas, you know, hiding in their music. And keep in mind, a lot of this material and these examples are going to be pretty basic, you know, pretty easy. And also keep in mind that great music doesn't mean it needs to be hard to play. Some of the greatest rock songs ever written or recorded are very basic. You know, think of Wild Thing or Louie Louie or, you know, AC/DC songs and stuff like that. Very primal. Very basic, but it hits really hard, so keep that in mind. With the opening, That's Nothing I Won't Do from the Energized album, and it's this bouncy blues rock riff like this. So it starts with this A7 kind of riff, and you're doing this trill between C and C sharp right there. Like that. You're kind of moving between this A and G. And then right there. And you can do that a couple different ways. I usually just cruise down and grab that C. And then the open A. You could also just come right down and grab that A right there, but I think I prefer that open A sound compared to the fretted A. Like that. It's up to you. So right there, the first pass. So you you kind of did the same thing twice in a row, and then the next time you're doing, you're gonna double up on that trill right there. And then the next time you're doing, so you're kind of reaching up there after the trill and grabbing that high A. And right there you're going to end with that little kind of a half step bend, or I guess it's a whole step. And then you're doing these partial chords. So it's like a little piece of, you can think of this a couple different ways. I'm thinking of that as like a little piece of A7, because you got that G and E with the open A. And you can also think of that as like a D over A right there, because you got D, F sharp, and A, and then down to A. You could also relate that to an A6 sus4 if you wanted to, since it's all over that A root note. You got that little single note riff, and then repeat it again. Next up is Hate to See You Go from the Rock and Roll Outlaws album, and it has this false start. So it starts twice, like this. And then you hear it basically come in with an acoustic guitar, and he's doing... band comes in and it starts rocking out. Something like that. So you're actually starting with this partial D into that E power chord, and then an A, and then a partial G right there. So as far as the intro, that's really weird, because after that slide into that partial G, then you're going to basically do, so it's like A to the open G, grab that E, then scooch over and grab that B and slide to D. So it's really, you know, different. Then a pause, and you want to do it again. And then just end with the low E open. That's where the acoustic comes in, and you're kind of mimicking the same riff, but it's a little funkier. So that's imitating the acoustic, because it's much quieter, and then it gets, you know, really loud. Next up is My Babe from the Fool in the City album, and it's something like this. So it's really basic, but just a G, and you're kind of scratching and sniffing on that G5. And you got the slide into that E from that D note. And you got that hammer on and pull off over back to that E. And then the second time, I distinctly hear the open A and then that slide to E. Just a slight modification to the first time. And then you definitely hear, like the last time, there's a higher, you know, this G5 to F5. And then I hear the other guitar doing lower, you know, power chords. That G5 to that F5. Like that. You know, really basic riff, but I like that kind of boogie groove. timeless slow ride from Fool for the City, and I think this is the bridge, but this part. So you hear this like partial A minor 7, and then a D over A right there. Think of that 70s kind of chord inversion right there, but that A minor 7 partial, D over A, and then you just start vamping on that A5 riff. Timeless classic song, and just that little twist of chords, you know, is really cool. But also really, really basic too, but it sounds great. Next up is the song Sarah Lee from the first Foghat album, and I'm not really sure if this song's about a girl or a coffee cake, but Sarah Lee's like this. So it starts with this A major chord, and you're finger picking obviously through the whole piece, but you're doing, that's A major, and then you're going to change the root to G right there, and then change the root to F sharp, and then change the root to F. So it's A major, A over G, A over F sharp, and A over F. You could also think of that as part of F sharp minor 7, or just F sharp minor, I guess. Like that. But you're just doing that kind of partial chord and that descending bass line. You can also see the way my hands arranged there on the fretboard. I'm holding these two down and using my pinky and index for those bass notes. So that's actually a good workout. You know, it's kind of an unassuming workout, but you're using all your fret hand fingers and changing notes at the same time, which is really challenging. Basically finger pick like crazy on this A major, and it's all reverse kind of rolling, like you're going backward right there, and then you're going to do that D over A, and then it's like a little piece of G, like a G over D, and then A major. A major to A sus4 to A5, and you're just moving that C sharp to D to E on the B string there. So right there, the first pass, and then do it again. Go to that D or that G over D. Last time right there, just do A major, A sus4, and then end on A major. Like that. Style stuff. It's a challenge, but it sounds really cool. Next up is Fool for the City from the album by the same name, and it's something like this. music, but it's E major right there, all the way down to C major, and then A major. And then you got this D6 right there to an E power chord. And I've seen a lot of players move from the A just to a D. That's not really what he's doing. It's a D6. So the open D, that A note on the G string, and the open B, which is your sixth. And then just end on that open position E5 right there. So it's kind of an elusive chord. It's not that. It would be more, I guess you could fret it like that if you don't want to do it this way. But that's definitely the way they did it there. Last but not least is I'll Be Standing By, and this is from the Night Shift album. It's the last song on the album. And it has this dreamy, kind of euphoric kind of sound, and it has an opening guitar solo that's really cool. Great song, overlooked. I don't think I've ever heard this on the radio, but it should be played there. Something like this. Just, picking through C major, and then D major, and then E5 right there. And like the very last time, it just does E5, and then B5, down to an E5 down there. That progression with the TC Electronic Ditto Looper, so that way I can add the guitar solo, and that's going to be something like this. Or something like that. But it has this really cool, classic kind of sound, and I love songs like that where it's kind of dreamy and it feels like you're kind of floating or flying out in space or something. That's a great song though, for sure. That's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with the Chords of Foghat. And Foghat's definitely one of those bands, they're popular and they have name recognition, and a lot of people know their music. Slow Ride and Fool for the City and some of these songs. But then they're overlooked. It's not really one of those bands most guitarists don't think, yeah, I'm gonna work on some Foghat. But once you get in there and start working on some of their songs, you realize, like, hey, these guys are actually, cool players, cool ideas, kind of left field sometimes with some of the chord moves. But then it's all related to blues or rock or even some soul and funk, hiding in there. Definitely a cool band with a lot of great music. But like I said, they're kind of overlooked. Certain songs are huge, and then the rest of their material most people have never even heard. So dive into some Foghat if you're not really familiar with their music. There's some great stuff here. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.